we're delighted that we have the good fortune to have two of the young, brave Iranian women who have stepped out the plate and representing us very well in the global community and specifically here in the United States. The two young women are twin sisters, Anna and Aida V. Eskemani. Yes, they're beautiful twins. The Honorable Anna V. Eskemani is the first Iranian to become an assemblywoman in state of Florida, Sunshine State. Yes, there they are. Hi, ladies. I'm not sure if you can see me, but I'm here. Prior to that, Anna served as the Senior Director of Public Affairs and Communications for Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida. She's known across the nation as an advocate for women's health and equality. Please welcome the Honorable Anna V. Eskemani.
Hello.
Together with Anna June, we have Aida V. Eskemani, who played a key role in her twin sister's successful campaign. She currently facilitates statewide and local public policy efforts for several progressive organizations in Florida, including Organized Florida, New Florida Majority and Florida Immigrant Coalition, and she previously has served as Chief of Staff to Florida House Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith. Welcome. Don't we love technology? Because it solves so many problems. I have a tech background, so I love this happening here because, things happen in life. So due to Anna's schedule at Florida Assembly and considering flight delays due to unusual weather pattern, it was determined that traveling to lovely California, who also has now unpredictable weather these days, it was best that we did this virtually. So it feels like you're here, so welcome. And my dear friend, Sudi June Faroukian, she's going to moderate this special, yes, round of applause, Sudi, who's been working nonstop. I don't think she has had much sleep organizing this. Who herself was recently appointed delegate to the California State Democratic Party. Please help me welcome Sudi June to moderate this lovely conversation.
Hi, everyone. It's so exciting to be here.
So today, since unfortunately we could not have these lovely sisters present here, so you couldn't hug them, you couldn't take pictures with them, we thought that you should have the opportunity to at least we get engaged with them. So after I ask some questions, moderated question, you will have an opportunity to also ask some questions from the audience. All right, let's go. All right, so Anna June, first of all, I want to congratulate you for writing your first bill, and I think it passed.
It did, yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, wonderful. You're on the right track. So your bio indicates that you have held prestigious and strategic positions. Can you tell our audience why did you get involved in these organizations? And as importantly, how did you find your way in that sphere?
That's a fantastic question. And thank you again, Sudi, June, and everyone for inviting us to join you through Skype. Our foundation is very much grounded in Iranian women. I think many people know that our mom passed away to cancer when we were 13 years old. Our parents came from two different parts of Iran, but they met in Florida, and we were working class. So our parents worked hard their entire lives, sacrificing for us to be able to, go to college and really advocate for families like ours. And so my passion for women's issues in particular was very much grounded in losing our mom at a young age, because when we lost our mom, I actually started reading literature by Iranian women for Iranian women, to get a better understanding of our struggles, but not just our struggles, but of the power and strength of Iranian women. And that inspired me every day to want to do more to support women and girls here in the United States and abroad. And that was really my beginning, to identifying feminism and really understanding the issues that impact women and girls each and every day.
Yeah. What about you? How did you get involved?
It's similar. Anna and I both got involved. Our first kind of activism ever was actually regarding Iran and human rights. We were both at the University of Central Florida in Orlando, and it was around when the Green Revolution was happening. And so
2009.
Her and I launched a petition campaign. It was all about student solidarity, about American students standing in solidarity with Iranian students, because we know so much of the movement in Iran has often been rooted in young people and young women. And so that's really how we kind of first got, engaged in activism, kind of cut our teeth in this work. And so we both wrote undergraduate theses around Iran.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Our parents raised us with so much pride in our people, and also they never shied away from sharing their struggle and our people's struggle. And so for Anna and I, it's always been very much ingrained in the work that we do. And for us, our parents sacrificed everything to allow us to live the American dream. And so we have sort of manifested that into doing whatever we can to help marginalized people. So much is rooted in just, our being strong Persian women and knowing that we run the show, right? So we have more of that.
And I'll add to that too, in 2009, when you saw the Green Movement happen in Iran, Ida and I were president and vice president of the Iranian student organization at our university. And it was very much a cultural organization, and we embraced that, but also made it a human rights organization. And we wore our green wristbands every day. And like I just said, we collected petitions at UCF to have our American friends show up for the Iranian community and show solidarity with the struggles happening in Iran. And that was so foundational for us. And we matched our academics, with our activism. So both Ida and I, we have masters. I'm getting my doctorate now. And so we continue to see, the history of our people and how that motivates us to be brave. Because especially for Iranian women, so much has been sacrificed to earn a more equal standing in society, and yet we're still so far from achieving that. And we feel that same struggle here in the United States as well.
Very well said. And so that actually leads me, I'm going to jump because I was going to ask this question later, but one thing that really stood out in your campaign, Anna June, was the fact that you not only did not hide your Iranian heritage, you put it out there in volumes, and I remember my mom came and told me, I've noticed she has a Farah Bahar on in every picture. So that was kudos to you. So tell us, strategically, I'm sure you had campaign managers and all that. How was that decision made to express all of you, all that is within you and represents you?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So our campaign, we actually push back against traditional consultants and managers because, to your point, many people would tell us not to do that. They would tell us, don't let people know you're Iranian. And in a state like Florida, most people automatically assume that we might be Latina. Iran is not a major demographic in Florida. Growing up, we were usually the only Iranians in our school. So if I had listened to consultants and managers, they would have told me to actually hide from it, to not tell my story, and to pretend to be, something more comfortable, I think, for everyday people. And our district too, District 47 is actually 85% white. And so this is a community that, is it's not, people come from immigrant backgrounds, but it's a very well established, like, American community. But it's also my hometown. And I've always been very proud of my Iranian identity, in large part because of our mom really teaching us the cultures. We celebrate Nowruz every year. We jump over fire every year. And we really are proud of that. And I didn't want to run for office if I couldn't be myself. I didn't want people to support me not knowing who I really am. And my Fafahar, not only is it culturally very important to me, but this is my mom's. And when she got really sick, I put it on and told myself I wouldn't take it off until she got better. But since she never got better, I just never took it off. So I've been wearing this necklace for, at this point, 17, 18 years. So it's a part of me. I refuse to take it off, no matter, who gives me that type of advice. And at the same time, I think my cultural identity, it's the foundation for my values. Good deeds, good thoughts, and good words are an incredible foundation to be a public official. And even our campaign logo, if anyone's ever seen it, our campaign logo is my name with a V, and the V is our mom's maiden name, Bishkai. And then the 3 stripes are good deeds, good thoughts, and good words. So I even wanted to be a part of our story in the sense of the logo that everyone sees, the logo that everyone puts in their front yard on a yard sign. Because if we're a nation of immigrants, then our immigrant story should matter, and we should be honest and open about it. And I have to tell you, it was really incredible because we were so open about our identity. There were so many people who would come to me and say, oh, I went to school with an Iranian, or my first boss was Iranian, and my roommate was Iranian. And you started really getting, a sense of connectivity. People were proud to say they knew an Iranian because they wanted to support us. And that's transformational. That's reprogramming people's perceptions of Iran. And that was a part of our mission as well. And one last thought too, that the number of young brown girls who were so proud and inspired by us. I mean, girls of every background, but it's specifically girls that look like us. They were really, really excited and proud. And even when I go to any environment, I get recognized a lot, especially in Central Florida. But it's so funny how, on campus environments, it's the Iranians, it's the Indian Americans, it's the girls who look like us, Pakistani, who see us and are inspired by us, and they want to run for office themselves. So, if someone like me, a working class daughter of immigrants, with an Iranian last name, if someone like me can win a race, a competitive race, my hope is that it inspires others to not only run for office, but to run as themselves and to inspire people to join them in action.
Yes. About it. My sister is the first ever Iranian American elected to any office in Florida.
Yes, she is. And you played a big role in that. I know you were on the back scene, but you played a big role. And I even told Anna, I said, you're the elected official, but it's harder to get in touch with Ida than it is to get in touch with you.
It's true.
So we know Anna keeps you busy.
Well, and Ida,
team effort.
Ida and I, were both cut from the same cloth. And Ida was actually the one who started the GoFundMe campaign for Pulse nightclub and raised over $9 million for Pulse survivors and the victims' families. And so, we've both been involved in this work for a long time, and we care deeply about people. And I think that's, again, grounded in our lived experiences, knowing what it feels like to be judged because of the color of our skin or, because of our name.
But I also think in like Persian culture, we are so giving, right? You can't go to someone's house without leaving with, bags and bags of food for the rest of the week. And, we give our heart and our soul and everything we have to our neighbors, to our family, to our friends. And so for Anna and I, we apply that same mentality to this work. We want to serve people, and I always think back to this is all I know is how to help and support and serve people, and it's so much of how we were raised and just in our culture, like that giving nature is in our culture.
That's very sweet. So most Iranian Americans migrate to U.S. after the revolution and really try to stay under the radar, and I'm so happy that your parents did not institute that in you. And they also would tell us, there was this memo that we all got that, politics is evil, stay away from it, Apparently none of us really listened, So that's a good thing.
Very good thing.
Exactly. So did you ladies grow up hearing about Iranian women's struggles and achievements? I know you culturally got a lot of lessons from your parents, but were you following, the whole struggle, the compulsory hijab, the struggles that the Iranian women's movement has had, not just in the 40 years from, at least the last decade, that they've been liberated and they've been looking for the equal rights. What can you tell us that kind of stood out for you?
Yeah, our mom never hid from us the struggle of Iran and of Iranian women. So she would tell us that moment where, she had to wear hijab. She would talk about how, Iran is such a rich, beautiful history, but that history was often stifled by the regime and things like that. And so we were always, nothing was ever sugarcoated for us growing up. Our mom always spoke so much about the struggle of Iran and her own personal struggles, and also just growing up working class in America, the struggles of that. And our dad sometimes would tell us trying to protect us, he would say, don't tell people you're Iranian. Tell them you're Indian. Tell them you're Pakistani. Because he was scared of us getting bullied or getting picked on or something like that. And our mom would always come in and say, no, you are Persian. You need to tell everybody you are Persian. And she would actually come to our school and teach our classmates about Persian culture.
Bring Goma Sabzi.
Yes.
Yes.
So much of why we are here and who we are is because we had such a amazing, strong woman mentor in our mom, but also her mom. Our mommy John is incredible. She raised 5 kids, 4 girls, 1 boy, and so we come from a long line of really strong women. But I think when you look at Persian culture, that's no surprise, right? So I think for us, we were always just taught, things were kept real for us. We knew what the struggle was. We watched news all the time. We listened to NPR. We kind of kept updated. And then it just became really natural for us when we got to college to really start getting engaged in activism. Even before then, Anna ran our friend's class president campaign in elementary school. And we were just always encouraged to follow our passions, whatever that looked like for us.
Well, and I'll add too, I remember our mom talking about how politics had really tarnished Iran. And she wanted to go back and see her sisters, and she never had a chance to because she felt that politically it was too hard. I mean, it was also expensive for us, but she didn't want to put a headscarf on. She really felt that the Islamic Republic of Iran was hurting the country, and she would talk about that all the time, about just how oppressive it was. And I remember her writing letters to her sisters because it was too expensive for us to call all the time. But she really yearned to go back to Iran and felt like she couldn't. And actually, when she passed away, she hadn't seen her sisters in over a decade. And our first time in Iran was in 2005 to bring our mom's ashes to the Caspian Sea. And that was such a transformational experience for us, meeting our family for the first time, really connecting to our culture in such a meaningful way, but also developing that appreciation for the people of Iran, but also recognizing the struggle and recognizing the fear that so many Iranians live in, if they get political, if they speak out. I mean, we were encouraged, not to talk in the cab because the driver might hear us say something political and we might get in trouble. I mean, a lot of it's paranoia too, but understandably, because you just don't know in Iran. It's such a arbitrary system of justice that you don't know, what's going to happen to you. I dream to go back to Iran, but I know with the current political climate between our 2 governments and just, our presence as progressives, I know it becomes more challenging. But, I'm a firm believer that my struggle is connected to your struggle, and none of us are free until we're all free. And it's one reason why I try really hard, even though I'm a Florida House representative, I can't make decisions on a federal level with international relations. I try really hard to teach my Republican colleagues in the Florida House and the Florida Senate who we are as Iranians and what drives us and where our values come from, with the hope that they could be supportive, in building better relationships with the Iranian people and finding peace in Iran. Versus what tends to be a very, inaccurate portrayal of the Iranian people.
Very well said. And you just answered my next question, so I'm just going to skip it. So, Anna, you also mentioned about, in your campaign also, you said that you're unapologetically progressive. Can you tell us what are your top 5 items on your agenda? Perhaps maybe you can talk about your first victorious bill that you wrote.
I love to. So just to give people more perspective, the Florida legislature has a Florida House and a Florida Senate. And so I serve in the Florida House, District 47, and we're in downtown Orlando, Winter Park, and Belle Isle. So we're very much the heart of Florida, one of the most important parts of the state when it comes to elections for presidents. I mean, it's called the I-4 corridor. It's one of the most important parts when it comes to determining national and statewide races. We campaigned, as you mentioned, as an unapologetic progressive, fighting for issues that impact working families. Some of our priorities have always included environmental protection. Florida is a sunshine state. We have some of the best potential for renewable energy, yet we are decades behind compared to other states. Educational enhancement. We're both proud graduates of public school, and we want to make sure that our public schools are strong for next future generations and for their parents. So we're fighting to protect public education. On the front of healthcare access, I mean, our personal story of watching our mom have to navigate a really tough health insurance environment, struggling to pay bills and struggling to get the care she deserved, inspires us to fight for healthcare access for every Floridian. We haven't expanded Medicaid in Florida, so that's a big conversation for us all the time. Florida ranks 48 out of 50 on mental health funding, so that's a big issue for us too. And then, of course, you mentioned in my bio that I worked at Planned Parenthood, and my Planned Parenthood story started as a patient. Because our mom had passed away, I went to Planned Parenthood when I was 18 years old to seek access to contraception, to find a method of birth control that was right for me. And I'm eternally grateful that Planned Parenthood was there for me. And I started volunteering at Planned Parenthood and worked there for 6 years, fighting for access to reproductive health. And that's always one of my passions, and it's another one of my connections to women's issues. We also care deeply about gun violence. Pulse nightclub is in my district. And for those who might not remember, Pulse nightclub was the place where 49 people were killed by a gunman, and it's scarred our community. It was primarily the LGBTQ plus community that was damaged by this act of mass murder. And so we feel really unapologetic about banning assault weapons, high capacity magazines, and one of the bills that I did file would keep firearms out of the hands of domestic violence abusers, because time and time again we see a connection between domestic violence and gun violence, and I want to make sure that those who have a conviction of domestic violence cannot have access to a firearm. And then finally, really looking at a better economic structure. Florida is a very service industry state. We're very much driven by minimum wage workers. It's tough to survive in Florida if you're a working class. Rent. To give you perspective, the rent in Orlando is actually comparable to the rent in Los Angeles. And I know the rent is high in Los Angeles, but Orlando shouldn't be like that. We don't have the same quality of life or the same income levels. It's really hard for Floridians to afford housing. And so we're looking at solutions to really ensure that Floridians can have a roof over their head and that you can reach your fullest potential by having a place to call home. So we campaigned on all those issues and more. And coming to the Florida legislature as a progressive is tough, because not only is it still majority white men who represent the state of Florida, but it's majority Republican, both in the House and the Senate and in the governor. So you have to get really creative when it comes to pushing forward your vision for the world, and at the same time build relationships. And again, I'm really humbled by the fact that both Ida and I have many Republican friends. We're very authentic and genuine when it comes to building relationships. And even later this month, we're hosting a Nowruz party in the Florida Capitol.
Bravo.
First ever. The first ever Nowruz party in the Florida Capitol. And we're inviting every member of the Florida legislature. And I've gotten really great feedback from Republicans who, once they saw the note about jumping over fire, were very excited about that idea. So, we want to do our part to build relationships. And, you brought up the bill that I just passed. So, as a member of the Florida House, we sponsor policy bills, and we also sponsor funding requests. And I've been doing work in a low-income community called Biflo for about 5 years now. We grew up near that community, and have many childhood friends who grew up in this part of Florida. And so we're trying to open a federally qualified health clinic in the area. And so my request was for a funding allocation, and it was approved unanimously, by this committee that is made up of majority Republicans. So it was a good first step for us, and we'll continue to keep pushing forward on all the issues that matter to us, alongside building meaningful relationships so we can keep fighting for the values that define us as young progressives.
Very well. So my next question is for Ida June, and since you already mentioned that Rent is pretty much like Los Angeles. Any chance either one of you want to move to California? Because not that Florida doesn't need you and they haven't served you well, you know, but I have to tell you, I'm just gonna, you know, we missed out for you being present here, and I gotta tell you, you missed out for being here because we got some hardcore Democrats in this hall right now. We have several new appointed or elected delegates to the Democratic Party here. Myself, one of them. Kimia Mohepi is another one. Michael Saul is here. Where's my Emma? Emma Jensen is here. And then we also have the chair of the Democratic Party of Orange County, Ada Bresciano here. And we got Michael Shinwright, who started the indivisible OC45.
Cool. That's amazing.
And I'm sure many others, but I can, you know, these are the folks that, they're my new peeps, you know.
And y'all can come help save Florida. Because we need more Democrats here.
Yeah, maybe we should travel back and forth, you know.
See it in jaw.
Yeah, exactly. So, Ida Jun, you've had intense campaign experience. I want to know what's next for you. Any chance you are considering to run for office?
I get that question a lot. I think right now the funny thing is I'm currently in public policy, so I'm actually a lobbyist for several progressive organizations in Florida, and so I'm currently working on immigration issues. Unfortunately, the immigrant community is again under attack here in the Florida legislature, and so we are working nonstop to try to stop these really dangerous anti-immigrant bills from passing. I'm also working on criminal justice reform here in Florida. We're looking at doing something similar to the federal First Step Act on criminal justice reform, except here in Florida, calling it the Florida First Step Act. I'm also working with my sister and other lawmakers on issues around affordable housing as well, and also really, really engaged in a long list of progressive issues. And so,
answer the question.
I like it. You know, Anna is older. I know she's 7 minutes older than you. So.
You know what's funny is right now when we both walk in Tallahassee, the amount of people who call me representative, yes. And I try to correct them, but sometimes I'm in such a rush and I just text her and I say, hey, just so you know, so-and-so saw you and, you know, said hi, they're going to step by your office. Like, I feel like...
Yeah, people call her representative all the time and I tell her just to go with it.
But, yeah. You know, for me, I see all of us operating in this ecosystem, and so good lawmakers need good advocates to give them the right information, right, to help draft legislation, to make sure they're connected to the people on the ground, because some of the affordable housing stuff that Anna is doing was literally written by renters, people who can't afford rent. It wasn't just an idea that, you know, some think tank came up with or that Anna thought of, which is all still good and important. But more and more of the work we do, we have to empower people who actually live these experiences to write these laws and put their ideas forward. And so my current role, in many ways, I'm a conduit of that. I'm that connector between the community and the lawmaker. And we definitely need more people like that. So I'm currently really grateful for the role that I can play. But I never say never, but I'm currently focused on this session and doing everything I can to help people. And if there's a role that would help me help more people, I would certainly consider it. But for me, it's about that ecosystem and all of us doing as much as we can to help marginalized people have their voices heard.
I completely understand that. And thank you for that and that suggestion to everyone. I have one more question for you, but I want to know if our volunteers have gathered any questions, if you can deliver them here, and I can start taking those questions. But the one question is, of course, we had the pink wave in 2018, highest number of women to be elected at state and federal level. And this is particularly important to us because us here at ICWIN, we're always, our slogan is embrace diversity and be bold for change. So what is your recommendation or suggestion for our audience? Why should they care and get involved?
That's a great question, Azizam. I mean, it's one reason why I ran for office in the first place. I watched so both Ida and I have been in advocacy for about 10 years. We've been behind the scenes, we've been empowering the community. And I was pretty content, like where I was. And I worked at Planned Parenthood. I had a staff of 6 across 22 counties, managing 11 health centers, going to Tallahassee, not full time, but going to Tallahassee when necessary. I was saving to buy a house. Like I was doing all the things that a 28-year-old would be doing. And then President Trump won. And that changed everything for me. And I looked around my community and I realized that if we really want to have a representative democracy, it was going to take more people like us to build that. And we needed to run for office. But again, even for me, someone who has all this experience and, was well suited to run for office, I didn't see myself as that person. I actually started asking all my girlfriends to do it instead. So one by one, I was like, you should run for office. You should run for office. I'll help you. I didn't see myself, in that role. And one by one, it was other women who would look to me and say, well, why aren't you going to do it? Why aren't you thinking about it? And that's what inspired me to start seeing myself as someone who could be that representative, be that reflection of a diverse and transformational democracy, one that listens to people and one that is held accountable by the people. And that's what pushed me to run for office. And so my advice to everyone is that you're needed right now. We can't have a representative democracy unless you're a part of the process. And it doesn't mean you have to run for office, though I encourage folks to think about that and to pursue it. But you have people in the room who are involved in a local Democratic Party, people who serve on nonprofit boards, people who donate, people who volunteer. Every way you give is transformational, and it moves us away from what we often call transactional politics, which is very much the notion of I do this for you if you do this for me. It moves away from that to a place that's more transformational, where we're giving with that expectation with the goal of inspiring you to join us in social change. And that's not going to happen unless it comes from the ground up, unless it comes from everyday people getting involved, getting to know their elected officials, and exercising their power. And I think that as Iranian Americans, we have a lot of power, but we don't always come together, around these issues. And even our campaign, we raised $523,000. We raised more than $500,000 on our campaign for a state house race. We raised that from 4,000 individual donations. I took not one penny from fossil fuel companies or big sugar or pharmaceutical companies. We ran a really strong grassroots campaign. But majority of our donors were not Iranians. And so part of me thinks, too, looking to the future of what can we do as now Iranian elected officials to really build our political efficacy as a community, to rally around issues that impact us, whether it's the travel ban, whether it's issues around visas right now. What can we do as a community to come together and to build power around issues that matter to us? And I'm really hopeful that, in my new position, not only can I fight for Florida in every way possible, but help bring Iranians together to push for an agenda that we can all unite around, one that supports Iranian Americans here and Iranians who wish to come to the United States, and for even our families that are still in Iran.
Wonderful. Ida, do you would like to add anything to that?
I think what I would say is that we need more women involved. Men have been in charge for a while, and there's a lot wrong. There's a lot going on, guys, and you need some women to come in and help fix it, really to do all the work, because that's kind of what we do. So, so we need women to run. We need that. We need to shake things up. And so if you are considering running or getting involved in advocacy, now is the time. It should have happened yesterday, right? So just get involved, be fearless, be bold, and if there's anything that we can do to help support you, we're happy to do that.
Wonderful. So we got some tough questions for you. Ready?
Ready.
Ready. Okay. What is your answer to the following question? Where are you from? American, Iranian, American with Iranian heritage, Iranian American?
That's a great question. I usually identify as Iranian American, but I'll tell people that I was, I'm the daughter of immigrants born in Orlando, but I usually define myself as Iranian American.
Yeah, I'll say Iranian American too. Sometimes I say Persian. I go back and forth. But I really enjoy saying Iranian American because I think it's really important that we remind people that Iran is our country. And yes, Iran could be a controversial place. There's a lot of misinformation about the Iranian people because of the ugly rhetoric that we see. So for me, it's really important that I'm very explicit about where we're from and this country to help redefine it to people. And also when people say Iranian, I correct them on that too. So I usually say Iranian American.
Yeah, and really help paint the picture that, because I think when most people hear Iran, they're thinking about the Ayatollah. They're thinking about burning American flags. Like they have this perception of what they watch in the news. And so for us to say we're Iranian American, it pauses them and helps them reevaluate like the stigma that they've associated with our community. And so I just point, I think there's a lot of power to that. If I told people that I was Persian, they might not put the connection to Iran. And I feel like it's my responsibility to help redefine what Iran looks like to everyday Americans.
Wonderful. So next question, I'm trying to move on so we can get through all these questions. So do you believe the energy of women, immigrants, and male allies can flip Florida in 2020?
Ooh.
I told you they're kind of good questions.
I love these questions.
I think so, but here's the thing we also have to remember, and I think Anna's election really helped with this, is that we also need to work to talk to all working class people, regardless of where they're from. And in Anna's district, again, it's majority white, and in some of her poor neighborhoods, and traditionally more conservative neighborhoods, when I would go knock on doors in those communities, I had some of the best conversations because I would tell folks that, our family were working poor, and our mom worked at Kmart for 15 years and struggled to make ends meet. And they would then start telling me their stories. And oftentimes it would be in the afternoon, folks would be getting home from work, they'd be in their uniform of a fast food restaurant or what have you. And so we would connect on that. And it's true, we know that struggle and they know it too. It's a very American story, regardless of where you're from, is that, the rent is too high, that we have a minimum wage economy in Florida, and that folks are struggling. And so often immigrants are blamed for that. But when you have immigrants coming to white working class people and saying, I had that same struggle, this light clicks off. And all of a sudden you realize we are not the problem. It's actually this system and it's these, corporate interests, these tax cuts. And that's the problem that we need to address. And so I think immigrant-led movements are absolutely key, but I also think we need to build bridges with old folks who struggle. And with that, we can really build some magic in Florida.
Well, and a part of it too, from our perspective, is 24/7 organizing. I mean, we knocked on 50,000 doors on our campaign. So it wasn't just that, I was an Iranian American running for office. I mean, we raised the money, we knocked on doors, we earned endorsements. Even we had more than 80 endorsements, including President Barack Obama. So we were really, really intentional about building an infrastructure that shines. And to Ida's point, we won. Our race was a swing seat. It's leaned slightly Democrat, and our opponent spent over $500,000. He did 25 pieces of negative mail, 3 negative TV ads. He even did a poll in the district that asked people if they would still vote for me if they knew that I was Iranian and connected to the Islamic Republic of Iran. It was insane. It was racist. It was everything you would imagine would happen. And it didn't work. But it didn't work because we were so aggressive about telling our story before someone else could tell it for us. And we knocked on Republican doors. We talked to everyone and did our best to build trust. And now as a legislative office, we're not campaigning right now, but we continue to be very accessible. We have our interns actually call constituents just to say hi. And just to say, I'm your state house representative. We want to help. Let us know how we can help, because we have to rebuild trust in governments, and that will reflect during the campaign cycle too. But I know for Florida, we have a lot of work to do in building those meaningful relationships with our community so that they actually trust us again. And I think that's part of our mission as fresh faces to the work, is that we can redefine that for our own party.
Very nice. Very nice. So Ida June, there's a question for you that says, can you expand on your fundraising efforts for the nightclub victims as a quote, second responder?
Yes, I can. So for about 3 or 4 years, I worked for Equality Florida, the state's LGBTQ civil rights organization. Before then, I was the fundraising director for Florida's first ever LGBTQ lawmaker, Representative Joe Saunders. And my most previous boss, he was also openly LGBTQ. And even though I'm not part of that community, it's one that's ingrained in the work that I do. And actually, I have after the Pulse shooting, I got a tattoo. We both actually got tattoos. I'm not sure if you can read it, but mine says Solidarity, on it says Orlando in rainbow, because we really believe in collective liberation, and LGBTQ people are oppressed in so many ways, and they also reflect the diversity of all of our communities, right? And so I worked at Equality Florida when the Pulse shooting occurred. We live about 2 miles away from that nightclub, and the first text I got that morning was from my boss asking all of the Orlando staff members if we were okay. And then that quickly, thankfully none of us were there that night. We were all safe, but we immediately jumped into action because that's what we do. And so, I ran a lot of the direct victim services programming around that. And that included helping folks get connected with sort of all the in-kind services and goods that were available. That was also part advocacy. So, advocating for undocumented folks who were impacted and their families, because Orlando is such an international community, and so many folks impacted were immigrants, their family were immigrants, they were undocumented, they were low-wage workers, Spanish speaking. So there were a lot of issues there as well. So I did a lot of international and national media around that too. And then I also launched a GoFundMe page called the Pulse Victims Fund, because we knew there were going to be severe financial needs for these folks, because again, the community they come from and the struggles they already face. And so we immediately launched a fundraising page, thinking we were just going to raise, $50,000, $100,000. And those were the original goals that we set up. But quickly, this page garnered international momentum. And within just a few weeks, we raised $9.5 million from over 100,000 donors across the world.
Amazing.
From 120 countries. And those funds were dispersed directly to the people impacted. So that's the families of the victims. Those are the survivors who experienced physical injuries, as well as anyone who was in the nightclub that night, because we know even if you don't have physical injuries, you have mental injuries and challenges because of how traumatic the event was. And no amount of money will ever, solve that trauma and that experience, but it does help alleviate some of those immediate stressors, because folks have to be off of work, right? And thankfully, a lot of the medical bills we were able to advocate to have them paid for. But there's a long list of challenges that come up when you experience such a horrible crime. And for us, it was very important, again, that we don't tell people how to spend that money. Traditionally, in a lot of these events of mass murder, nonprofits will get the money and they disperse it in programming. But we were very, very intentional about advocating that the funds need to go directly to the people who are impacted, because they know what they need best. And so I'm really, fast forward now 2.5 years after that tragedy, Orlando still has a lot of healing to do. And a lot of the folks impacted are some of our closest friends and our chosen family. And so it's been really beautiful for me to see those funds be put into use for folks to really live their dreams. So there was a restaurant open in honor of a loved one that a family lost. We've had some of our friends start new lives, right? New careers, new educational opportunities with those funds, and also folks just pay their bills and do things like that they couldn't do, and try to put their lives back together after that tragedy. So I'm really, for me, I feel like I was in that position to do that work, and I'm really just grateful I was there and I could help these folks in that way.
Well, you're both amazing and shining stars, and I'm sure we will really follow your leads as you light up this road. At such young age, you are just an inspiration. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I do want one question with just a yes, no, and whatever you respond to it, I'm going to put a ... behind it to be continued for our next chance that we talk. So here's the question. It won't be personal. Well, maybe.
We're both single, yes.
Yeah. Okay, since you offered. Okay, but that was not the question. The question was, do you consider yourself as a feminist?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Dale.
Woohoo!
Anna actually,
All right.
in her office,
With that,
has assigned the definition of feminism in her office.
yes. Although the definition can differ, but yes, I'm glad that you feel comfortable with that distinction. And so we enjoyed having you. You both are such delight, and we appreciate all of this time, the past few months that we've been working closely with each other to make today happen. And we look forward to having you in California. Please give us a tip if you decide that you can make it here. I know there's a group of people lined up that would love to meet you in person.
We'll be there soon.
We always joke in
And I'm going to turn it into Bita Milanian, our wonderful MC, as she's going to be closing this session.
Thank you so much for making time to be with us. You guys are so inspirational. I followed your win minute by minute. I was posting, I was shouting out. So thank you for making time for being with us here today. And I just cannot get enough of chatting with you guys. So thank you, ICWIN, for making this possible. Have a great rest of the day in Florida. See you soon. So inspirational.
نشست درختان تبر شدن و بار میبرن کماکان الاغ‌ها. لعنت به ساده لوحیت و آن دل خرد، بهتت زده شکسته در این شهر باورد، به دست دوست یا که به آغوش امن عشق این بار اعتماد کنی. در کل شهر